people getting a wage, my friend, but £59,000, the median average salary for a tram and train driver in 2021. I will ask you one simple question. You talk about a cost of living crisis. How do you think that sounds to people on 12 grand a year? Sitting and driving a train, you want more than 60 grand? Come on, man. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think the issue here is we're about levelling up, not levelling down, making other people poorer. I mean, the question is, when you say just sitting there driving a train, I mean, how much do you get paid for just reading stuff out? You know, there's the issue here. Where we have increased our...
I'm not asking for a pay rise, but that wasn't the question, was it? What I'm asking you is this. I repeat what I said to that Lynch man. I completely get that people want a pay rise, right, in terms of what has happened with the economy. But maybe I used the wrong words. A train driver is on an average wage of £59,000. That is tens of thousands of pounds more than a nurse that saves people's lives. Irrespective of me sitting here, I'm not asking for a pay rise. How do you, in a cost of living crisis, expect the British public to go, oh, they definitely deserve some more money? That's my question, Simon.
We don't want to see our pay go backwards for the third year in a row. And the reason that drivers' salaries are at that level is because over the last 20 years, we have modernised, we have given them productivity, and in exchange, we got the salaries. There's been significant changes in how a driver operates in the last 20 years.
How?
It's been led by ASLEF.
They have to do?
Hang on, Jeremy, let me finish.
What do they do? What do they do? What's changed?
The big change is in shifts, the number of hours we do. There has been a huge increase in the length of shift times. Mileage restrictions that we had in the BR days have all gone. Driving hour restrictions have all gone to allow them to provide a more modern service. You know, when we see Grant Shapps saying that we're the blockers on modernisation, actually they're the ones that want to take us back and make it all less efficient. Now, we've got a choice here. We can either say, tell you what, we swapped productivity for the salaries. Rather, our salaries keep in pace with the productivity that we're giving you, or we reduce the productivity to meet our salaries. Because we have done a deal over this last 20 years, and that is what our salaries are worth.
In terms of the RMT, and I find myself using this as an analogy, which I think is quite important. The median salary of its rail members is £31,000, which means that actually their argument for an increase against your average of 59,000 is probably a stronger one. You talk about shifts and hours, but you haven't been specific. You've talked about how your salaries have gone back in the last 3 years. How have shifts changed? What, they're longer? Yes,
9 hours. The average, the maximum turn length in 1995 was 9 hours, between 7 and 9 hours.
Yeah.
Now, the maximum shift lengths go between 5 and 12 hours. Now, 5 hours might seem like a bit of a nice gig, but actually the 5-hour shifts can be extremely productive because of the split shift arrangement that you end up with the early lates for commuter sites. This gives them a lot of productivity.
Can we go back to the average man? You keep saying wait. Why don't you wait a minute? I'm asking you about the average man or woman on the street, and you won't answer the question, right? If I am only... treat me as a voice piece, right? Straight away. Dave, on the text. All this man and his union are doing is convincing us that driverless trains should be the future. They're on 60 grand a year. I'm on 14. Ask him to answer that. That's what I'm trying to say to you, my friend.
Yeah, OK. So why is he on 14?
Because he's a care worker. He's a care worker.
Right. Because there's been a casualisation of care workers. Now, why should we be making the argument that everyone's wages need to come down? Do you think there's a real issue? I bet the care worker agencies that employ him are making huge profits at the expense of his labour. Why should we allow that? Why should we have, we get this lies from the government saying we want high-wage, high-skill economy. We want to level up. It's absolute nonsense. All they want to do is increase the profits for the agencies and their mates and their companies, and it will be done at the expense of normal working people. And this is what...
Tell Mr. Weller I get paid £10 per hour as a support worker, says Sarah. I deal with medication, personal care needs and finances. I'm not going to shout at him. I'm just going to say, I'd love half of £59,000. Can he explain to me that? I'm just telling you what people are saying.
Absolutely, Jeremy. Absolutely. You are spot on. Why? The scandal here is not that rail workers, unionised rail workers, have managed to keep their wages relatively well. It's how have we allowed, as a country, that some of our care workers and our important key workers have such low wages and such terrible terms and conditions.
Do you think, if that is the case, and I agree with you, by the way, if that is the case, I go back to my first question. Do you think that there will be an acceptance, an enthusiasm and a support for your demands when the pure basic facts are, whether you talk about shift patterns or you talk about what's changed, mileage restrictions, the fact of the matter is, and I've read you 2 texts and they're coming through like people will go 59 grand. Do you understand? That's my, it's all good to talk about levelling up. I just think that morally, tonally perhaps right now, what would you answer this very quickly, sir? Are you striking now to take advantage of what can only be described as a slightly insecure time for this government as they go through a leadership election and Boris Johnson is on the way out? Is this a good time to strike? What about the British people whose summers will be affected by your actions?
It's never a good time to take strike action. It's never good for our members, it's never good for the industry, and it's certainly never good for the travelling public. But we've been dealing with this since the back end of last year, when Boris Johnson was in a relatively strong position and looked like he could survive any crisis. And so, to say that we've taken advantage of a weak government is incorrect. It's just the fact that the weak government imploded whilst we were trying to deal with these.
Okay. Simon, final one from Mick, who's a member of your union. Weller is not telling the truth. Why are Sunday shifts voluntary overtime? Modernisation joke. Final word from you, Simon Weller.
Absolutely. Some of the companies do not have Sundays in the working week so we can run a 7-day railway. And we've been really pushing hard. And the other companies, actually, it's not that popular with our members having Sundays in the working week in some companies. And we've been pushing really hard to get Sundays inside the working week. Now, it's resisted by the employers, because they don't like it, because they much prefer to rely on overtime. Overtime is a really cheap way of doing the job.
I'm not being rude when I say this very quickly. 59 grand is the average median salary for train and tram drivers. How much do you want? Very quickly.
Well, it's just not a third year of a pay cut.
How much do you want? What increase? What? Well,
ScotRail has sent out a 5%, which was accepted by the members. We've had a 4.75% accepted by the members. It's voted by the members. So, and funnily enough, the companies that we have had resolution on are the ones that are not under the control of the Department for Transport.
All right, Simon Weller, you've had your say. I really appreciate it. Don't think me rude. I've got